The four theories here refers to a small book by Fred Siebert, Theodore Peterson, and Wilbur Schramm, first published by the University of Illinois Press in 1956. And reprinted in more copies, over 80,000, also translated into more languages than perhaps any other textbook in the field of journalism and mass communication. This work was a bestseller for decades, because it obviously filled an intellectual gap among communication academics, as well as journalism professionals. The four theories of press elaborate the four concepts of what the press should be and do: the authoritarian, libertarian, social responsibility, and Soviet communist theories. First and foremost, the authoritarian theory attempts to describe that all forms of communication are under the control and regulation of the governing power. What is meant by this is that all the forms of mass media and press should respect and follow all the rules and regulations placed upon them by the governing power, and that they do not have the right to question any of the government's actions. This theory of mass communication originated from the ancient Greek philosopher, Plato. Moreover, the English monarchs had relied on this theory of approach when the printing press was invented. The monarchs prevented the middle class from causing an uproar and fueling a revolution by creating laws that allowed them to use taxes and licenses and censorship to control the state. Interesting enough is the fact that to this day some of the techniques placed down by the monarchs are used as a guide to the theory today. Censorship still restricts the freedom of the press and media. However, it has now been branched out into even more categories, in order to have complete power and authority over all aspects of the state. Such categories include political, moral, religious, military censor, and corporate censorship. In addition, any media that attempts to violate the government or oppose its policies, the authority has the power to nullify its license and terminate it. Moreover, the government attempts to prevent the publishing or the spread of any controversial or sensitive information that may put the nation's peace and security at risk, or in other cases, if it presents the ruling government in any negative shape. Some major characteristics of the authoritarian theory are the restriction on the limits on what the media could publish. The media is seen as a two-edged sword, where the effects can end up or on a devastating note. Thus the authority attempts to use this sword to present it in a positive manner. Some major characteristics include the restriction of the freedom of press and the use of propaganda. This use of propaganda is not something that is new to the world. During the Second World War, Hitler and Mussolini used this method to have complete control over the public. But the abuse of power did not end there, as during the 1990s in Uganda, journalists could face imprisonment for asking questions that countered the state's policies. Moreover, many writers have been imprisoned and their published books have been banned. For instance, British writer Salman Rushdie faced a jail sentence due to his satanic verses that harmed the image of Islam, and this is a prime example of religious censorship. Some examples of modern authoritarian governments include the regimes in China, Myanmar, Cuba, and Iran. All in all, the authoritarian theory faces as many weaknesses as much as its strengths. Some weaknesses include its abuse of power and its ability to restrict the knowledge of the people. However, its policies can instill discipline. Next, we move on to the second theory, which is often referred to as the libertarian theory. This theory is the opposite of the authoritarian theory, in which the government does not regulate mass media. The theory came from the libertarian thoughts of Europe during the 16th century, after the invention of the printing press, and after the press movement. It was advocated by many celebrated personalities such as John Locke, John Milton, John Stuart Mill, and Thomas Jefferson. This theory believes in individuals' freedom of thought and expression. Everyone has the right to voice their opinion. The theory also consists of flow of all kinds of information, since it is not restricted by the government. Another feature of the libertarian theory is that there is no censorship of any kind. However, the media must follow a code of conduct since it is accountable to the law of the country. This theory encourages and allows for diversity. It puts forward multiple sides of the same story, presenting the truth. The theory follows a laissez-faire approach in which there are not set of rules that need to be followed. One of the weaknesses of applying this theory is that, by having individuals expressing their thoughts, ideas, and opinions openly, it might cause conflict or chaos in the society, given the amount of power and control that this theory has. Another is that it might not always act responsibly. It might misuse its power and abuse people's privacy and dignity. It might also challenge the security of the country. One of the strengths is that this theory functions with ultimate democracy. Another is that the theory encourages healthy competition among the thoughts and ideas. Most importantly, that individuals can freely and openly express their thoughts in media, with no intervention or restriction made by the government. An example of a country that applies the libertarian theory would be Finland. In 2011, the third theory is often referred to as the Soviet media theory, but it may also be known as the communist theory of mass communication. After the 1917's revolution, the Soviet Union was restructured with the new political system, based on Marxist-Leninist principles. The newly formed Communist Party by Lenin shows much interest in the media, which serves to the working class in the country. In the Soviet theory, media is taken as a part of the state. In the communist theory, the ownership of media is with the state and the country, which runs the media as per their wishes, to fulfill their propaganda of control. The Communist Party owns all the media of the country. Media is supposed to work for the betterment of the state, communism, and whatever the elite of the Communist Party tells them to do. Today's Soviet theory is accepting small parts of the government work, but criticizing the state as a whole is prohibited in the communist theory of mass media. Nowadays, there are countries that apply this communist theory, such as China, Cuba, North Korea, and Vietnam. Media is a platform where people should express themselves freely without any limitations or restructure. Nowadays, some audience get their information from media. They rely completely on any type of media. Media highly influence audiences in every aspect of their lives. Moreover, people who work in the media should be majorly aware of the messages they deliver to their audiences. As a result, workers in media should acknowledge the theory of social responsibility. Started in mid-20th, the theory of mass media began to arise in Europe and started to develop in United States of America in 1949, due to the revolution that took over for the Commission on Freedom of Press. Siebert, Peterson, and Schramm wanted to grant all masses their full freedom and to have no absolute censorship. Furthermore, this theory is beneficial to audiences due to the fact that it makes people who work in media reveal the corruption that's happening around the world. For instance, this theory gives voice to the voiceless to shape different opinions. Moreover, the well-known TV host, Jimmy Fallon, presents his script freely in his show. He even criticizes any government without limitations, when in fact there are other countries that have high censor in their mediums. For example, Bassem Youssef, TV host, was exiled to another country because he criticized the Egyptian government in a sarcastic way. To conclude, the social responsibility theory helped masses to develop the real meaning of freedom of expression and help democracy prosper.